draft process. How much did you guys look into Spencer Rattler and just what are your impressions?
We spent a lot of time with him. I'd say there was 5. Pro day, and then we had a private workout. We were all in Phoenix, Scottsdale area where he's from. Steak dinner, the whole 9 yards, test in the morning, throw. He did really well. It's not surprising to see there's a, again, I'm going to use an analogy. There's a calmness when he plays, and he too has been through, the adversity early on, coming out of high school to Oklahoma and then transferring. But there is a confidence when he's on the field, and you see that in preseason and last week. It's not too big for him, and he's got a live arm. We were really impressed, and look, not that it matters, but we had him graded higher, and I'm sure the Saints did as well. And it got to a point where you just had to take the grade, but he was impressive.
Sean, I know I've asked you this about players from other teams. The knowledge that you guys have of plenty of the roster, Pete being there, and then DJ working with Joe and Emrod, does that help?
I think from a personnel perspective, look, you'd say most recently Cody, and so because there are a lot of players there for me that I'm unfamiliar with, but Pete or Cody and so that part, relative to the scouting report, strengths, weaknesses, and then look, Dennis and I have worked together for, he was on our original 06 staff, and then became our defensive backs coach, became a defensive coordinator, came here, and then head coach. Then I hired him back, and so I think this, though, I think, and I think I said this the other day, I think on a short week, there'll be, a wrinkle or two, but I think so much of it is the rest and recovery and preparation mentally, because you can't actually get maybe the full speed work that you'd like, and that's Thursday night football. I mean, that just is what it is, and so, yeah.
Along those lines, what's the biggest challenge of these short weeks, especially Thursday night?
It would just be the recovery, the time from your game to the next game. And so I think we've done it long enough. When I say that, our league has, where teams maybe 10 years ago weren't as, in Dallas, they play one every year, right? Like long before there was Thursday. And look, I can recall, I could tell you the game. We were playing Miami. Sunday our game ended. Coaches, we were back in Sunday night, and we had a short week, and it was just different for all of us. But man, we struggled in the game. So it was like, all right, that's not, in other words, and I think by and large, most of the teams have begun to figure out that schedule. And adjust.
When I've talked to people in New Orleans a few times, I've been back there, there's a little bit of an us against the world, and it seemed like you embraced that when you were the coach. What is it you enjoyed about coaching there in New Orleans?
I think what happened, none of us planned. In other words, I don't know that we anticipated where we were going at the time we were going. We were going post-Katrina. In other words, I was with Dallas, and I'd interviewed in Green Bay, and I was on the New Orleans interview waiting to hear from the late Ted Thompson. And Mickey Loomis I'd met for the first time. I seemed to like him, but, have you ever been on one of those interviews where you're kind of looking around thinking, man, this is his problem. It's not going to be mine. And that evening, I went back to the hotel to take a break before dinner, and I got a voice message that I hadn't gotten that job. And I remember throwing my phone into the pillow and just like, holy cow. And where I'm going with it is, you know, Drew came, I remember us recruiting him thinking he's going to Miami. And then obviously you take a player like Reggie Bush, who's going to get drafted by the Texans. And so fate would have it, there were a number of us that ended up there. And all right, and so we're starting a rebuild. But I think none of us could ever understand the impact relative to it was bigger than football, and that we weren't prepared for. I don't think any of us were. And then those, you know, that first year, I don't know, in preseason, I don't know if we won a game. At one point I remember thinking, you know, I don't know if we're going to win a game this year. And then, you know, we won a close one at Cleveland to start the year. We still hadn't played at home. They were still fixing the Superdome. We went on the road and fell down to Green Bay, if my memory's right, 13 points. We came back and won that game. And then and so right off the top, you know, we had some close games and then beat Atlanta. You know, that was the Monday night game. And so I've said this before, it wasn't our best team, but it was one of our tougher teams. And we ended up in the NFC Championship game in that first year. And like, but it was more than that. It was just the recovery. And we would fly home from regular season games. There'd be, you know, 1,000 people at the airport. Just like none of us could have ever envisioned that. So there was a uniqueness to it. And I think a lot of it, they've always been passionate, but I think a lot of it had to do with the year prior and how difficult it was. And so, yeah, and then pretty soon, you know, I remember we had to, look, you have to beat your division, and Gruden was at Tampa, and they'd won a Super Bowl. Foxy, those are two good friends of mine, like two closest. I'd worked with John for 4 years at the Giants. We were both coordinators there, went to a Super Bowl, and John Fox, and then Gruden, you know, hired me. I was his assistant in Philly, and these are two good coaches in our division, and so, you know, that was the first step, you know, trying to figure out how to, but meanwhile, I think that uniqueness, timing-wise, and then they hadn't had a lot of success, and then anyway, so that was different, and I think, and I'm not, like when I say there's over 100 people that share that same experience, that was like, wow, we weren't prepared for that.
After Sunday's game, though, was like, I'm ready to go practice right away. That competitiveness, how much of that is what you like pre-draft and what you appreciate?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Look, there was a point in the game, I don't know what the number was, we fell down, and I turned to him, I said, hey, this NFL thing now, it's not like college. You know, each week we were just in a lighthearted moment. I just said, you know, we don't have any. I'm not going to use a college team because I don't want to. But we don't have any such and such university on our schedule. You know, each week you can catch yourself right away. You know, and so, but yeah, look. And this is, you know, we talked about, this is the first time he's played on a short, you know, a number of these guys haven't played on a Thursday night, you know, but that's the schedule. They've played on unique schedules themselves when it comes to bowl games and whatnot. And it's really a mindset that ultimately you have to prepare for.
You said with Drew that you had reached out to him previously. The way the schedule's set up, do you get a chance to see him at all, shake his hands?
You guys will, I mean, I think they're doing it at halftime, so probably not. I mean, our halftime's 8 minutes, and it takes me a minute to pee. And then sit with the coaches, go through the list, take a highlighter out. What are the features for the second half? Go in, talk to the team. Here are the keys in the second half. Ready, break. You know, it really is fast. And so, but he's been to camp, and, you know, I'm sure there'll be the right moment to reach out to him. He's going into their Hall of Fame, and then they also have a Ring of Honor. And look, I don't know what year it is now, but this will be the beginning of a number. I mean, and so I'm glad. Look, he wanted it to be this game, and that means something. So, but the focus for us, though, in our team, I told him this morning, is look, we're in the business of collecting wins, and this is the next one, you know, we have to get in the preparation and all of it. And so, you know, years later, we'll be able to look back on it. But right now, the focus, and, you know, obviously these nights are late just because you're doubling, you're doing two. You know, last night was base, play action, first and second down run, and then, you know, call it 11, you're starting on third down. You know, you're doing two nights. So the key is to not over-install and get the right stuff.
When you're opening the window for a guy coming off IR on a short week, is there a different challenge with that?
Well, the different challenges, and you see how we're dressed. You know, in other words, you want to, you'd like to be in shoulder pads and helmets, and we had a few guys that put shoulder pads and helmets on. So this day counted as a day that we were full because we had a few players that were full. That's how the rule works, and that's fine. But yeah, it's a little bit different.
Coach, I know you talked about it yesterday, but is it going to be odd even just being in the visitor's locker room?
I've never been in it, so I know there's been a lot of remodeling done to everything there because they're hosting, you know, when they get the bid, whatever, 5 years ago, that it comes with these qualifiers. But I've never been in it. I guess I have been in it, but it's different now. The old one, you used to have to walk the field. You know, there's always a few stadiums where you're carrying your luggage, you know, down the sidelines. Vegas, Houston, there's a few. That used to be the case, but it's different now. And early on there, you know, all of us had young children. After the game, win, lose, or draw, we would always play flag football with the children, and we'd go across the field, and then periodically players, and it was like you had to stop, you know, like you did when you were little, and say car, you know, and you're waiting on somebody, and you're like, you're interrupting the game. And then, and the kids, you know, they really look forward to that. We were trying to build something, and but I have no idea where the buses pull up, or you know, it'll be just a new, you know, I know I'm familiar with the stadium, but I've never been in the new locker room where they're at now.
Coach, you mentioned your wife is taking care of all the tickets and everything.
It's done.
How many people are going to be there, though?
If you haven't heard from me, it's not good news. Yeah, if you haven't heard, I would say, ironically, less than this past weekend, which this past weekend was different. My children, friends and family that, you know, I think she, in the off season, looked into buying a suite ahead of time, and so it's all handled, which is great because there really is not, I mean, I'm driving back from the stadium on Sunday and debating whether to come in here and start on the film, and then at the last minute, I'm like, no. And then it was like, how can I get to sleep before 9? You know, in other words, how can I bank some hours? And fortunately, I was able to do that. So, but you know, I'd say 20. You know, yeah.
Sean, how beneficial is it, like, for someone like Guerilla,